Okay, it's me. Here's a few things on this unique electric cigarette. That's the case. It's a hard case. And the one thing that's the exact same one I have. This is yours, actually. One thing you're going to want to know, I got myself in trouble a couple times with this. Over here on this side, in the corner, get my hands out of the way so I can focus, there's two zipper pulls, and you're only going to ever want to use one of those. It'd be the first one. I'll pull it back a little bit here so you can see. Like that. So I got one here in my hand. And then there's another one over here behind it. Don't ever use that one, that's in my left hand. Reason being is because you can only zip it this way. The first one in this direction. All the way to the right. The one on the left will move as if you could close it, and it does, but for some unknown reason it just gets really, really stuck and makes it almost impossible to close it back up. Or to open it again, I mean. So to close it, just take the same one that you went from left to right and just go total opposite, right back to left. Once I started doing that and figured out what the bug was, I never had a problem with it after that. But in any event, this is suitable. This is everything here in this one little kit. And let's see, I'll open it up. Hopefully I don't have to pick this camera up because it gets very jerky being digital. And inside there's room. This up here is the actual wall charger to plug it into the wall to charge, and then also the cable connects in there. You actually use your computer cable charger to plug it into the wall charger, or you use a computer cable to go direct to computer, but I'll show you all that in a minute. Here there's room for 2 bottles of the liquid nicotine, and these are sealed right now. You'll have those in there when you get there, so I'm not going to actually open it to show you. Once the top is off on these, I could get mine out to show you. I probably will have to. It's a very fine tip point that allows you to actually load the drops in there. It's a very thick liquid. Good idea to shake it up every time before you use it. And they just store right up in here. You can move stuff around here in a different layout, but this seems to be the one that works to keep everything closed, so it closes easy. Down here in this part, I'm watching this through a little screen here as I'm doing it. Up here is the car adapter. You can plug it into the cigarette lighter. And then at the other end of that would plug the USB computer cable, which is over here under my thumb. And then here we have the USB computer cable tucked into that little mesh screen there. That basically works on 2 of the different chargers and directly on the computer. As you can see on that end, it plugs into your USB jack of the computer. And then this end is where the electric cigarette you screw it in. And there's a little light on here. It'll flash red when it's charging, and then when it says either solid green or once in a while blinking green, as long as it's green then it's fully charged. So to go back to this wall adapter, if you want to just plug it into your regular house power, then you just pull this out and you just plug it in to the wall. But I would suggest before plugging it into the wall, then you take your computer cable, the USB computer cable, and you'll see on the end there's a little jack there, and then that just plugs in. Oh, wrong way. It only goes one way. There. That plugs in there. Then it plugs into the wall, and at the end of that is where you would screw into the little cigarette. You can see it's got the place to screw the cigarette on. I'll show you all that too in a second here. Then you actually have the actual electric cigarette devices. There's 2 in the kit. I got one of each color. They have several different colors. You have pink, blue, green, yellow, red, all that kind of stuff. The one over here in my right hand is silver. Both of mine are silver. I don't have multiple colors. And then the one here is black, but this is stainless steel. This is more like a rubbery surface on the left. These are almost identical to mine. The only thing that's different is mine does not have flashlights on the bottom. Yours does. That's a new upgrade they made. So all you have to do is, this is the button I was telling you about. These are actually off right now, completely off, meaning liquid chamber won't heat, which I wouldn't want that to happen right now anyway, since there's nothing in there. When you press this button on the side, as you can see, the flashlight comes on, kind of handy, and a little glowing thing here. Same with that one. So you got both of them. They have a little rubber tip that just goes on. Stuff is not supposed to tip out, but it's advised to keep this, even remember where it is in the case, and keep the case upright, and your liquid about the same. There's a seal in here, but I'm going to show you how to take all this apart in a minute. These are wicks inside this little plastic. It might be glass actually. Chamber. This is where your liquid gets loaded in. Those wicks absorb the liquid, and then there's a heating element in the middle. So let's start with this black one. Might be easier to see with the camera the way it is. That you would be taking it off to smoke it, obviously. So to actually load the liquid in, all you have to do is take this black piece off, hold it down, and I got yours clear. These come in different colors too. There's red, blue, green, and it's hard to see the numbers that are on here, and I don't know if I can zoom in on that. It's probably going to blur, but I would suggest not. Let me see if I can turn this upright, and the camera's probably going to shake. Okay, that works. Yeah, it's going to be blurry for whatever reason. But you'll see the numbers up here. It goes to different millimeters. I would suggest not filling it above the top line of the milliliters. That's why I got you the white ones, because it's easier to see these markings on here. If you were to fill it all the way up to here, then it can start spilling down over the top of your heating chamber, which you want the wicks to gradually bring the liquid nicotine to the heating chamber and not have it just pouring down and saturated. So when you get this in person, you'll see that, unless you can see it now, I can't see it through this video screen, but it's right about where my thumb is where you would want to stop as high as you would want to go with the liquid. So all you have to do is I'm trying to do this right here. I would suggest not holding it near the button, just go around the sides or whatever. And I would also hold it up around here, because this part where my left hand is moving, that also twists off and separates as well, and I'll show you why later. But to fill it up, all you gotta do is hold down here, then counterclockwise turn this black tip with the other hand, and there's a little rubber gasket at the end of this to keep it from spilling out, so you want to be careful of this little, you'll see all this in person, a little rubber gasket where my index finger is on this black tip. Now what you have the actual chamber. That's where you don't want to get the liquid in when you're using your bottle. Of course, when you take this cap off, there's going to be a very fine tip point on this that will fit very easily down into this little hole. Just keep it away from the center hole, and what you want to do is, I wish I had a pointer here. Take the tip of it. I have mine. I could probably go get mine in a second, but I don't want any liquid to get in yours either. But just run it all the way around, inside of course, but around the outer edge of this center little donut hole that's in there. And of course, you're going to want to do it when it's upright like this. Let's see if I can bring this back a little bit. So you would do the whole thing when it's perfectly upright. Obviously, just tip the liquid in upside down, and it's a pretty durable squeeze bottle, so you would just have the little tip and be going around like this. It's hard to do this on a camera. Unless I had Dave getting a picture of me filling mine up. But the little fine tip, it's about needle thickness, needle point type thing. Keep it down on the edge, and don't squeeze it all into one side. It's best just to move it around a little bit. Sometimes when it's standing upright, you'd even have to like snap it a little bit if you get a bubble. And just keep filling it. When it gets up to that line I had mentioned, then you just put this tip back on here, and you're ready to go. Well, I'm going to have these fully charged, if you don't get this before the shipment comes, and ready to go, and they're going to be turned off. Unlike mine, again, yours has a light that doesn't, that That's not off. That only works, I guess, when the cigarette is off. The other thing I said, since there's two, obviously, the parts that are down here from the center down are actually considered the batteries. These are the actual batteries that charge these from the middle point down to where the light is. Those are interchangeable, these two tops, with each other. So let's say they're both fully charged and you're actually smoking off from this one, and this one's fully charged. Well, let's say for some reason this battery starts wearing out, but this one's fully charged. You can remove this chamber of liquid without it spilling out and put it onto your other battery that's fully charged, and this is how you would do that. You again, don't grab it on the button, the power button, just right around here where it's ridged, and this side, and you twist them in opposite directions, like this. And now what you have, this is the actual battery. That's the thing with the button. And let's see if you can see. It's just a contact point up there. So this is the actual battery. This is what you need to charge. And you just removed your chamber. And let's say you still had some liquid in there and you wanted to put it on this particular battery. If this was empty, I only keep one full at a time. I don't keep two because I figure it's better to keep it in the bottle. Then you could also, turning in the middle, separate this chamber from this cigarette device. So let's say it's empty. And take what's left in this particular chamber here and put it on your fully charged battery, so you can start charging your other battery that just is very weak or ready to wear out. And now you have the remaining liquid that you had in here on this battery. And when the other one's charged, you can just put that back together like that. The most important thing about these, and I learned the hard way, I had mine in my pocket one day at work, and it was not off. And I say off for a reason. When I crossed my leg, because I was sitting at a chair at a coffee shop in the corner, I guess my pant pocket pushed the button and held it in, and it got very, very hot in my pocket. And I'm glad I learned about what off is, because this last trip to California 2 months ago was the first time that I brought these with me. And had it been in this hard case, and even though it's a hard case, things get really crunched sometimes in a overhead luggage compartment for even a carry-on. There's off and then there's off. And off means it's completely off and will not turn on or power on in any way unless you do a certain sequence of events. So this is really off right now, even though when you push this button, which is the same button to smoke, or vape is the correct word, it's the same button. To turn the actual whole cigarette on, you take that button and push it fast 5 times. So you'll see what happens. I'm going to push it fast 5 times. And of course it didn't work because wait a minute. Try it one more time. This is a slightly different model than mine, so it might work differently. Oh, it worked. That's how you know when it's on and off. It's either 4 or 5 times. It seems like yours is working on 4. So right now when your flashlight is on, that means your cigarette is off. And when I push it 4 or 5 times, watch what happens. The light goes out on that. So the next time you push the button, your flashlight at the bottom is not going on. Not the bright light. The only thing that's actually lighting up is the colored LED light. No flashlight. You can see the difference. That's cigarette on, and only that's glowing. This is cigarette off, and your flashlight's working. So to turn this, which is now on, back off, you just hit it 5 more times fast. And it has to be fast, one after another. So we can... There, and you saw the flashlight come on quick. Now when you turn it on, the flashlight's on, and the cigarette will not be on. That, should that button get pressed down like that, I don't think the LED light would use a lot of power because they don't heat like a heater does to heat the liquid. But at least it would stop the thing from overheating, because obviously it would also wear the battery out really quick. But when things overheat like that, that's when batteries can explode and the elements can blow up, and that's true for any battery, not just these things. So I'll do it once with this one. Just make sure this one is the same thing. As you can see, the flash stainless steel one, I'm going to push it 5 times. There, and that's the 5th time this ring lit up here. I'll do it 5 more to shut it back off. And it went out and the flashlight came on. So if you had it, say if you're putting it in your purse or something like that, you'd probably want to, and it also keeps the battery charged longer that way too, to make sure it's really off when you're not using it. So right now the flashlight's on, so there's no heating going on for the liquid up in this area. Press it 5 times, say if you wanted to use it to vape or smoke. There, the light flashlight went out, and then the ring up here glowed. Now every time you hit it, the only thing that's really lighting up is just that ring down here. And of course you just puff up there with the protector cover off. And that's about it for the basic operation of it. Let me show you the charging part. So if you want to plug it in just to the computer, again, you just separate it here in the middle like you were going to fill it up. And
nobody here?
No, nobody's here. Dave's just getting out of the tub, so he's wondering why I'm talking. And then all you have to do is take this, and this applies whether or not I got the video camera running. Yeah, you just walked out in front of the table with no clothes on. We'll have to play that back after.
Well, I was trying to get by you.
Oh.
I didn't know what you were doing.
So anyways, we'll say hi as long as you're out here.
Well, you gotta
I can't redo this. I've got too much into this now. Anyways.
Yeah, but I just walked over there.
I don't think it came into the camera. Yeah, we might have to redo the video if it's... Anyways. So this is your USB computer cable. Alright, and regardless how you're going to charge it, whether it's going to be in the wall, electrical outlet, the computer, or the car, it doesn't matter. You're always going to be using this cable one way or the other, for the simple reason being that this is where this connects to. So go through that once more since we got distracted there for a minute. We'll say this is fully put together. Always be careful when separating. Sometimes you may even notice that you can turn this part up here where the glass is. Don't turn too much, obviously. And there's a reason for that, and I'll show you why later, but always make sure that's kind of tight, clockwise, but not tight. Where you're separating the two halves, your chamber of liquid and your actual battery is right in this ridge area where the power button is. So you just want to take both and turn in opposite directions for charging. Once it starts turning, you can just turn it with one hand, that doesn't matter. And it'd probably be better to turn the battery on because, as you will see later in a few minutes, these two little things also separate. They're screwed in together, and I'll show you why later. At least with this video, you can constantly play things over and over. Make sure this thing is off here. Alright. So back to your USB computer cable. So as you need, that's where the little light is, right there where my thumb is. The cigarette battery, e-cigarette battery, will just go in here, and you just have to screw with the battery end, like my right hand. That just screws in there, like that. And now you have, this is now connected to the charger. At this other end, at this point, you have the option to plug directly into a USB port of a computer or a laptop or any USB powered device. I would obviously either use a computer or a laptop, or this is where your wall charger comes in. And again, when you're done using that, you can close the power prongs back there. So you would open that up. I would suggest connecting everything first before plugging it into the wall, then that way you don't have any worry about anything shorting. And then you take this end of the USB computer cable, goes one way, plug that in there, then this gets plugged into the wall, and it's hooked up already to the USB jack, like that. And once you plug this in, then your LED light will light up here and it'll blink red for, depends on how discharged the battery is, it could blink anywhere from half an hour to 2 hours. When it's done, it'll be a solid green, or a green that maybe blinks maybe once every minute or something like that, or every half minute. And then when you're done, all you have to do is naturally unplug it. I'd probably unplug it from here next. You can close that up. Then you would just disconnect it from here. And one thing to be aware of, every time it's plugged into this charger, it's going to turn the battery, cigarette battery, is going to turn itself on. It'll be like, even if you had this off by pressing it 5 times like I showed, when it's plugged into the charger, it automatically turns the device on. So you'll already be on, so you'd have to hit it 5 times to turn it back on, double off if you wanted it really shut down, if you're going to put it somewhere. And then once you have this fully charged, then all you got to do is go back and get this, which normally would be the empty one. I keep using the same one over and over and keep the other one for a spare. So then you just put this back together like that and twist both in opposite directions just to make sure they're tight. Just give the glass a little bit of clockwise turn to make sure that's tight. Again, I'll show you why after, because this also separates. And then you're back to stage 1 on this, and it's ready to use after it's been charged. The reason I said about this glass turning, I'm going to show you that now. They didn't sell me any replacements to go with this, so either you can order them or I'll order some spares. They're only like $2, but these wicks eventually will wear out, as well as the heating element. The wicks will actually wear out before the heating element ever does. I found that out, and they of course don't like the idea that people do this, but it does work, and it's perfectly acceptable to do it. After you use this a couple of times, you'll notice that the liquid that sits in here, when it's sitting on the wicks, has a tendency to start looking like it's forming a jelly type adherence to the I don't know if you want to call them rope. It looks like rope, it's more like string, but it'll start looking like it's gelling up on the wick, not so much in the chamber. Liquid will always be in it's almost like vegetable oil. It's actually propylene glycol is what it is what the nicotine is suspended in, but it will look like it's jellying up on those white wicks, and it does actually jelly up on there, which is perfectly fine. But after time, it'll end up being like a pipe where it gets hard to puff, and that's when they officially suggest that you just replace the whole thing, but you don't actually have to replace it because it adds $3 or $4 on, obviously. So let's say we go back to taking this apart at the half point, like you were going to charge the battery, but instead of dealing with the battery, this is why it said to be check every now and then to make sure that you turn your glass a little bit to make sure that that's tight. This area down here, just where it's silver, separates from this glass area, and I'll see if I can do this in full view without it being cramped up here, and it turns again in opposite directions. And when you disconnect that, oh, that's a little bit hard right now, there it goes. This is how you would actually clean your wicks. There's the wicks. And the chamber just came out. You just turn it a certain way, and it eventually separates. You gotta be very careful not to twist those with the thumb and forefinger, or not to touch them too much. Reason being, I did once and they completely unraveled. If you do take this out to clean it, don't like rub the stuff off. I would advise probably not taking this little rubber tip off that's over here on the right side. Next step, right down here where it's ridged, where my right thumb and forefinger is, and where my left thumb and forefinger is, the two ridged areas. Let's see if I can get back there. Those two areas separate by turning in opposite directions. And I'll show you in a minute here. Separate those two like this, as I'm doing. I just broke it free, so I'm going to turn it with this left hand. Now I have just this, and then the wick actually with a little tiny stem. And those are the two pieces that just came apart. You can touch the wick. I would just, especially when it's wet, I would be careful not to, but I'd say if you just wanted to move it down a little bit. This is the part that if you soak it in rubbing alcohol and say like a bowl, porcelain bowl or plastic bowl or whatever you got, cup, doesn't have to be much alcohol, just enough to cover it. When it starts to get hard to draw on it and it starts sounding like it's crackling, snap, crackle, pop, you can just put some alcohol. I use a little Rubbermaid container, and then just drop this down in the bowl, maybe submerge it and let it sit there for about a half an hour, and it dissolves all that gelled up nicotine liquid off these little cloth wicks. and cleans it, and then I just leave things apart, like, and then sometimes you don't really have to clean out this chamber, but you can if you wanted to, and then I just let everything air dry on the counter. It doesn't usually take more than a half an hour for everything to air dry. I'll just make sure everything's good and dry before putting it back. This little rubber tip here where my left finger is pointing does come off, but I wouldn't advise doing that, because then that's when, if these wicks, they're kind of impacted down into the center, once those come out, that's when there's another big chance that it's going to start unraveling. Plus, right up near where my finger is, and underneath that little rubber tip, and that's the reason why you go around this little center point when you're filling it. Underneath this little rubber tip is actually where the heating element is. So what's going on in this whole thing is that when it's in this chamber, so spin it right side up like that, the wicks are drawing the liquid up and down into the center of the chamber where the actual heating element is. So to put this thing back together, now that I've got it apart, I just want to get the two pieces together here again and start turning it. And once it gets just the first couple threads on and go back to the center, I would hold it with this right hand here and then just turn it back together with the left. And then you would have, then this is assuming that you had cleaned out the wicks. And then you would just gently insert, as you can see how that goes like that, the wick and the heating element back into the chamber. Now obviously I had mentioned before to be careful about turning the glass, because you can remove this to put onto another charged battery while your other battery is being charged. And once you start turning this right here where my right hand is moving around, obviously your liquid nicotine, if there was any in there, is going to spill out all over the bottom, through the bottom of that. So you just turn that until it's nice and tight, and then this also loosens too, so just to make sure everything's tight so it won't, none of the liquid nicotine will spill out of there. And had you cleaned that and soaked it in alcohol, that might be a little damp still a little bit, but try to let it air dry out as much as you can. Then you'd be ready to go back and take this black tip off like you did before. And you can do that with it off the cigarette battery, by the way. You could actually fill this right now that these two areas are tight. You could remove the black tip, like I'm doing. It might be easier to show this way since I had the whole thing in my hand before. And then you could just dribble some down in there. And again, I would keep it going in circular motion, like leave it steady, give it a couple squeezes, you'll see it start to fill up, and move it around, give it a couple more squeezes there, and just keep doing that until it gets up to that last black line that's on there. And that's about it. There's nothing else I can think that needs to be known about this. Pretty simple and straightforward. And I'll actually put the thing back together. And I'll probably charge these up tonight and get them out soon. I'm going to have them in the same box as Charles's DVDs. And all that's on, and as you can see, it just kind of fits neatly right up in there. I keep this area reserved for the charger up there. And then the USB little cable goes down here. And the car charger there. So when you're done, it will look like that. Everything fits in there nice and neat. You got 2 bottles of liquid. Close that up, and again, always go with the one zipper only, otherwise it jams. And that's the end. That's it. And this, by the way, I don't know if you plan on if you had to go anywhere, but this did actually make it through my carry-on luggage, and it was not even subjected to secondary inspection. I kept it on the upper pouch area of the carry-on where it's subjected to getting pressurized, but you can actually, with this our case, it didn't matter. And the reason I did that is rather than put it in the area where there's clothing in that, it's best to keep it in a zipper pouch, as close to the surface of the carry-on as possible, because these do, from what TSA said, they do resemble small, and there are bombs this size, the same size as this battery of the Cig, that are actual bombs that they use in some part of the world, I don't know, but in any event, they can be mistaken for bombs, so it's best to leave them as visible as possible and accessible as possible, but I didn't have any problem getting through security with that. I just left it right at the top, so if they needed to check it, they could, so they can obviously tell the difference. Anyways, hope you enjoy it, and happy holidays. I'll talk to you later. Bye.